quiet. Let me tell you what. You guys drank my beer. I got a different beer backstage. I drank that. Then I drank another beer. Feeling pretty good right now.
Did anyone actually drink part of that beer? Did anyone actually drink part of the beer?
I drank some of it.
Okay.
I saw you thinking, I was like, well, I guess I'm going to go around. We got another beer. Came back. It's like, Rachel left her beer. I guess I'm going to have that. So.
I mean, it's like Chekhov's beer, right?
Yeah.
I mean, someone has to drink it, just like Chekhov did in the original series.
So,
That was very funny.
we have the BFA theater arts makers in here. But Sean, so I've been seeing you guys perform for years, and Matt, I've seen you in Shakespeare as well. Like, what is it that made you say we need Star Trek to be an improvised comedy troupe?
So two people from our cast who actually aren't here, Griffin Eckstein and Irene Marquette. They used to live in Las Vegas, Nevada, where they performed at Star Trek The Experience. And Griffin and Charlie McCracken, who's another improviser, were trying to devise they wanted to do like a midnight cult science fiction show at I.O. Chicago. And they were, trying to, I think they kind of like rifled through a bunch of ideas, and then I think they were like, why don't we just do an improvised version of Star Trek? And then so they emailed all of the improvisers they knew who liked Star Trek.
That's a gigantic Venn diagram.
Yeah, and so that's sort of how the show launched as like a live theatrical show at I.O.
I'd like to add to that just briefly, because I think that in addition to the actual genesis of this show, the reason that it works is that Star Trek is an intellectual property that is bigger than any specific instance of it, where you have a lot of shows that are like improvised popular culture thing. That's like improvised Buffy the Vampire Slayer and improvised everything, but they kind of have to rely on specific parody, right? Whereas in Star Trek, there's so many examples of Star Trek that now there's like a generalizable Star Trek.
There's Voyager, there's DS9.
And now you can take everything and say, well, let's just like mix it up and see a different ship, because we've seen different ships all over the place. Mm-hmm. So you can do and we can have a Trill, and we can have Vulcans, and we can have everything like that, but it doesn't have to be a specific parody of a specific cast anymore. So I think that's why it is very cool as an improvised show.
Now, did you pick your own characters? Because you've been Crit for forever. Is that something that as a troupe you said we need a science officer, we need a commander?
When we first started workshopping the show, it was about finding kind of the tropes, kind of like Nick was alluding to, of like, there's always a non-human human character. So Charlie's character was a sentient gas cloud that was the doctor, but didn't understand humanity, and he or human physiology, and he lived inside of a suit. He was just a gas man. So there are these certain tropes that we always kind of went with, and we actually tried playing different positions, but we've always played the same like rank and characters in the entire 6 years we've been doing it now. But early on, we were kind of moving around and trying different things. I remember rehearsals specifically where I played like a very like Bones-esque doctor that we just didn't stick with that, And,
Bones Star Trek, not Bones Fox.
Yes, yeah. DeForest Kelly.
For a moment, I was like, you're not like David Boreanaz is not like cult level at this point.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Not for that show.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So we've always played the same characters, and on the podcast, more so than in the live show, we tend to play other characters. So we have like kind of a staple of like, since it's all theater of the mind and all audio, we tend to jump around a little more and try different things on.
That's cool. I didn't listen to a podcast about 18 months ago, and then I got heavily into them. I binged on podcasts, and your troupe was one of the first. I think it's so dynamic that you do a live show, and then you do something to archive for the internet. What was the choice behind that? Did you just want to reach a larger audience, or what was the thinking there?
The thinking was we had done an initial run at I.O. and they told us we had to stop. And so we were, we all really...
After a year.
It was like 10 months. So we all really wanted to continue doing the show, and so we were kind of like, oh, well, we could do it in this theater, and I can't remember, was it Chris or Nick?
It was me.
Eli's been in the show for about 6 months. It was like, well, why don't we do it as a podcast? And this was like 4 years ago, I think, at this point.
I think it was. Nick was the one who realized it could be a podcast. The Fireside.
Yeah, Fireside Theater. I just grew up listening to audio comedy, and I had always wanted to do something that was basically a radio comedy play. So.
And I think the thing was, it's not like the show got canceled and we're like, well, no, we've got to keep this going, because it was supposed to be an 8-week run and then it was a 10-month run. So but it was one of those situations where we kept like, anytime two of us were together, we just ended up talking about that show, and it's like, oh, maybe that had more legs than we thought. So that I think kind of stirred us to pick it back up after. The show was canceled for was done for about a year before we started doing the podcast again. So.
And just like any instance of Star Trek, it was picked up again right after. Well, that was hilarious, and plus you got me to chug a beer in front of everybody. I feel great. I feel fantastic. Where can we find you online if you wanted to subscribe to the podcast?
So if you want to subscribe to the podcast, you can either look us up on iTunes, Stitcher, or whatever your favorite podcast listening to thing is. If you want to just find us on the internet, we are at improvisedstartrek.com or theimprovisedstartrek.com. And if you don't think you can remember that, again, take one of those little cards from your table. The website, in addition to all of the podcast episodes, also has all kinds of cool extra content like character bios and a cool LCARS scan of the ship that shows you where all of the crazy stuff from our shows on there. And there's an R2D2 on that scan hiding too.
124 episodes now?
Yeah, 123, although episode 123 has been released, but not episode 122.
We got a little out of continuity. It'll be fixed on Sunday.
Well, out of over 100 episodes, download one. You're gonna love it. Everyone, give it up for Improvised Star Trek. So we're going to run IS Chicago. Check it out, guys. Thank you so much for coming by. Of course. And I'm very, very sad. It's about that time of night, everybody.
Boo.
I heard one boo. I want more boos.